Yeah, so that's my living situation for the month or so, isn't it? So, yeah, sleeping in the back of my van. Okay. Pretty sure I locked the front door, and now I've said that, I'm going to have to check. I'll say it outright. One of the reasons that I now live and work where I do is because I don't work in March and April. So with 2 months between contracts, I knew I was going to head out on the road in my minivan Roland. As I figured out my plans, I decided that I would be on the road for about a month. Between March 18th and April 16th, I spent a month on the road around southwestern Japan and slept in my van as well. This series of videos is a summary of that trip and not a blow-by-blow, day-by-day account, but this first video just covers the first 5 days of my trip in somewhat more detail than the others, and for good reason. I had a big challenge ahead of me. Was I going to be able to skate 30 kilometers across the Shimanami Kaido, which connects Honshu, the main island of Japan, to Shikoku? There will be at least 2 more videos in this series, possibly 3. But first, the Shimanami Kaido challenge. I've had an ambition in mind for a long time. I wanted to cross the Setonaikai, the inland sea of Japan, on a cycle route known as the Shimanami Kaido. This route straddles the expressway bridges that cross the many small islands between Japan's main island of Honshu with the smallest main island of Japan, Shikoku. The total route length is approximately 70 kilometers, but I would not be skating it all, just the bridges. I've lived in Japan now for over 4 years and was 40 at the time of recording. Everything I saw on the web only mentioned cycling the Shimanami Kaido, and I'm well aware of the grey area in Japan's laws regarding skateboarding on public highways. The only real concrete information is that skating on busy roads is illegal, but on quiet roads there is no explicit ban. But defining quiet road is very much a local jurisdiction thing, so I had no idea whether I was going to get stopped skateboarding on the streets, which can be deeply frowned upon. I guess you can probably see my frustration. But of course, some of you might be like, I don't want kids skateboarding on my garage roof, making a nuisance of themselves. And to that I have this to say to you. That was ages ago, like 1991, and I was only 8 years old at the time, so get over it already. I actually do skate running errands locally where I live, down to the post office or to the Japanese class that I attend, or maybe the supermarket. To be honest, it's just a fun way to get about, and involves zero pollution, including noise, as my cruiser board has nice soft wheels that don't make much road noise, much less than a car for sure. I skate at local parks, of course, outside of that, but I don't just skate so I can skate in skate parks. I want to skate through life as well. I live in Mie, a beautiful part of Japan that is pretty much completely forgotten by foreign tourists when they come to Japan, and just over the mountains that I can see from my door is Mie Prefecture. But I guess everybody goes to Tokyo, Osaka or Kyoto. But I guess if you're coming to Japan for your vacation for the first time, you're probably going to go to the bits that you've seen on TV, YouTube or whatever inspired you to come to visit Japan in the first place. Travelling at first through Nara, avoiding the quiet, relaxed nature of Nara Park. Hang on a minute, I just need to check. I think that's how I meant to describe it. According to the 10 Commandments of Japan travel videos, when mentioning Nara Park, ensure to describe it as the quiet, relaxed nature of Nara Park. Okay, good, got it. My destination for the first day was somewhere around Himeji in Hyogo Prefecture. Beyond Nara is Osaka Prefecture. Quite interesting, at least from the point of view of driving through Suita. Suita is a city itself, and to look at it, it seems to tick off some of the I Spy Book of Japan tropes. Monorail? Check. Expressways with complicated signage? Check. Random Ferris wheel? Check. Concrete and high-rise buildings? Check. Beyond Osaka, heading out through Hyogo, things eventually got a lot more rural and interesting again, especially compared to the urban sprawl of Amagasaki and Kobe. A lot more pleasant for sure. So why skate the Shimanamikaidou? Why is this an ambition of mine? Why isn't every day in Japan like living in an eternal theme park of overstimulated wonder for me? Well, this is gonna blow your mind. Are you ready for this? I have a job. I work 5 days a week, 40 hours a week at that, which is pretty normal to be honest with you. And I have to do all the normal stuff that anybody has to do, like go shopping, make dinner, get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, those kinds of things. You know, the norm. Life is life pretty much anywhere you live in the world, and we all have the same kinds of chores. I think if I was to stand gawping at a vending machine that serves Hot Boss coffee and then started yelling "Suge" at it, one or two things would happen. The first one is that locals might think I am slightly strange. Second, I might appear in one of those little tiny boxes on TV. I have been to Himeji before about 3 years ago. It was stunning and the cherry blossom was blooming that day and the sky was a perfect blue. The weather on my first day was not that much different, but the cherry blossom was nowhere to be seen. So much so that signs around the castle were saying that it was just having a bit more rest. Certainly, listening to some of the voices as I sat enjoying the view of the castle in the evening light made me feel a certain sense that if only they had come 1 week later than they had, it would have been absolutely perfect for them. From Himeji, I headed to what is called a Michinoeki in Japan. It literally means road station in English. In the UK, we have something similar to these called service stations, but unlike service stations in the UK, Michinoekis are free to park at. Please remember kids, tiredness kills, but pay for your parking, it's 3 AM and this place is rammed. But deep sarcasm aside, Michinoeki are one of Japan's real treasures. Often they have local restaurants serving local produce for local people and local markets, decent rest facilities, and are all over the country, not just on expressways. Naturally, my first night was indeed the local hub for the boy racers. It wasn't the best of starts to my trip, as I had a terrible night's sleep and dinner seemed to take forever to cook as it was so damned cold out. Thankfully, I can say that this was the only night where I had boy racers making an utter racket until the small hours of the morning. That said, towards the end of my trip, I was kept awake by some local skateboarders who decided that their local Michinoeki was a good place to skate, but I shooed them away towards the local resident's garage roof and told them to start acting their age and skate somewhere where it was absolutely definitely illegal. You know, skate properly, cause some aggro. The next day started with the beautiful views of this part of the Hyogo coast. Not all of it is as scenic though, as this area has some excellent places to build docks because the water is deep in the inland sea of Japan and the sea is calm, and so a lot of shipbuilding industry is in this area. That said, this coastline is probably one of Japan's little hidden secrets because away from industry, it's really beautiful. Roland lacks any form of washing facilities and most Michinoeki do not have showers, and I decided against my flannel out and having a strip wash in public. I'm saving that one for when I decide to pack my bags and leave Japan for good, as I reckon that's quite a good way to save on the airfare, and maybe they'll also return my belongings at the same time as deporting me. I'll let you know when I get round to my top 5 bargain ways to visit Japan video. You'll recognise it as I'll have my mouth open wide enough to catch flies, a picture of a torii gate on the video thumbnail with the word shock in the video title. I decided to front load the skate at the start of my trip because, to be honest, I was a bit nervous. Would I put my skateboard down and immediately be swarmed by the JSDF and police for making too much noise outside a pachinko parlour and disturbing the business of a local politician who was merely trying to repeatedly shout his name through a megaphone from a slightly knackered looking Toyota Hiace? Okay, I think I'm ready to skate. Oh my god. Sorry, officer. I'll protect the peace and the manners of Japan by not placing my soft, almost silent skateboard wheels on this concrete. Sorry for making a noise and for disturbing the peace. Shimanami Kaido runs between Onomichi on the mainland Honshu side of Hiroshima Prefecture, across the islands towards Imabari in Ehime Prefecture on Shikoku. The expressways or motorway is a tolled route, but luckily until March 31st, 2024, it was toll-free for cyclists, so I kinda took that I was in with that crowd. The first bridge is the Onomichi Bridge, which is not open to non-motorised traffic, and the Onomichi Bridge is so narrow that even without a sidewalk, there was no way I was going to be skating across that bridge. But the plan was to skate at least the 5 major bridges, with the smaller arch bridge, Omishima Bridge, being optional, as I had one logistical problem, which the astute of you will already be realising. But before I explain that, a key part of the route to skate across was the longest complex of bridges in Japan, the Kagoshima crossing. Technically 3 separate suspension bridges, but with a total connected length of just over 4 kilometres, and that would be pretty rad to skate across. And anyway, why not wake up before dawn and watch the sunrise over the inland sea of Japan and feel the cold air flip through my hair and watch the ships come and go beneath the huge suspension and cabled stayed bridges? Life is too short. Reason enough alone, I think. Often these things only develop the meaning they have in your life after the event anyway. Some people run marathons, some people play team sports. For me, skating the Shimanamikaidou was my thing. Anyway, back on topic, another aspect of Japan that really helps, actually getting back to my original point when travelling on the road, is the sento and onsen culture, or public baths. You'll find these everywhere, small towns, cities, rural areas, urban areas. They are literally all over Japan, and though some are a little bit more expensive, most are very affordable, somewhere around the 500 yen mark. This gives you access to showers and baths and other facilities like sauna and jacuzzi, and some even have outdoor bathing, which is a real pleasure in life for me. You'll be surprised how many people I've talked to in onsen who were doing exactly the same thing as I was. Well, not skating the Shimanamikaidou, but travelling around a bit of Japan in their vehicle and getting scrubbed up in the onsen. Honestly, it was a daily pleasure on this trip to be able to do this. Just remember, sento and onsen is one of the places where you really do have to take your shoes off before entering the building in Japan. My first sento of the trip was in Okayama City, out in the suburbs in a local daycare centre. Okay, I'm sure you'll be glad to hear that I've had a good old wash and shower and bath and all the rest of it. It was really good in there, actually. It was very cheap, 410 yen. Just at the Okayama, I don't know, it might have like a branch name or something, but it was Okayama Furiai Centre or something like that anyway. So, I don't know. I can't see the sign properly from here. So, but anyway, not too bad actually. So I'm going to head off to the castle and the gardens next to it, which I think are, is it Korakuen? I'm going to have to check the name, just bear with me a moment. Kurakoen or something like that? Yeah, Korakuen. I did get it right first time. I think the only reason I was sort of thinking I doubted myself, Shushu, no, not yet, is because that was the name of a ramen restaurant that I used to see quite frequently up in Iwate. So, anyway, so, yeah, I'm going to head over in that direction now. It's actually quite warm today. I wasn't expecting this. I expected it to be a bit cold and dreary. So, yeah, let's hope it lasts the rest of the day. That would be pretty awesome, wouldn't it? So, yeah. Anyway, enough of my natter, eh? Right, time to have a good look at Okayama Castle. I've only ever driven through Okayama twice, so it'd be nice to actually see something of the place. No bicycles or motorcycles allowed. Nothing about skateboards. The castle is a rebuild and I didn't go inside, but it's pleasant enough to look up from the outside, and being a weekday it was very quiet. Admittedly, the main attraction to most castles for me is looking at the outside of them, but some of the original castles do have very interesting history that is worth going inside to read. Most have options for different languages other than Japanese, so don't hesitate to go inside a castle that piques your interest. The main thing I was looking forward to was the Korakuen in Okayama. I've had a lot of people rave to me about it being a must visit, and it was very pleasant. Certainly unlike a lot of places in Japan, as large-scale landscape parks, in say the vein of Capability Brown, are few and far between here. In fact, that's the best parallel I can think of in some respects. Imagine visiting a smaller Petworth park. It was just like that, just no deer. They were all enjoying... Okay, so it says here, I just need to say the calm, relaxed pace of Nara. They were all enjoying the calm, relaxed pace of Nara. It definitely had some charm, but maybe it was the season. But the lack of colour reminded me that it was still very much the tail end of winter. But I would recommend visiting it, and Okayama itself seemed a very nice city from what little I saw. Well, I've just been to a second-hand store and I picked up R-Type for the PC Engine, the second HUD card, because they were released separately over here in Japan. So you have to buy 2 HUD cards to get the full game, whereas I think on the TurboGrafx 16 it was the HUD card capacity was increased to allow for the full game on just one card. But anyway, so I found it in there. This is Okayama City for 3,000 yen, thereabouts, 3,050 yen or so. Which is the best I've ever seen it. So yeah, slightly more than I was expecting to pay for a game on my vacation. I was being very strict with my budget, but at that price it was a no-brainer, because I have never ever seen that in all of my 4 years living in Japan for that price. It's usually double that, if not more. So turn right. And that's obviously complete in box as well. Anyway, heading off to the Michinoeki now. Yeah, gonna get myself settled in for the night. Trying to get there before it's completely pitch black, because that would make things better. But I've already soaked the rice in water, so it should be all good. Just got to get out of Okayama now. Well, it's been nice here. I'd recommend it. Yeah, so this is where I'm parked up for the night. Yours on the little kip there. There you go. Yeah, I'm going to sort out the panels for the windows in just a moment. That's the side one. Need to do the back one first and then work my way around. Yeah. This is where I'm parked up for the night. Looks nice. The other place was nice, but it's just a shame those boy races and the motorcycle kids came along and just made it very noisy. Anyway, rice is on the go and water for cocoa or coffee, not decided yet. Okay, this is tonight's dinner. I've got some mackerel, saba as it's called in Japanese, and I've got some pickles over here, lovely. And then just in here, hopefully all ready now and looking beautiful. Oh, lots and lots of rice. Now, I'm not going to eat all of that tonight, obviously. But I've made enough so that I can make some onigiri for tomorrow, so that's rice balls. Yeah, those will do for breakfast in the morning, you see. And I've got some furikake on there, just seaweed or goma, sesame seeds. I have to think of what it is in English then. Yeah. Itadakimasu.
Comes from. This is one of those games where what you have to do to progress is really obscure. You'll often have to find items in order to unlock progress, but the game doesn't tell you what those items are, even in the big cutscenes.
Good morning. Day 3 I think this is now. I'm already losing track of how many days I've been away. This is Tamano city, I believe. Pretty nice Michinoeki here. Forget the name of it, but yeah, very very nice place to stay last night. No boy racers revving around the car park and speeding up and down the coast road, so that was much better, and dinner cooked a lot quicker last night, so hopefully I can get in the rhythm of doing it like that and it'll be no bother at all. So today I'm heading off to Fukuyama City to start with. That's over in Hiroshima Prefecture. First of all, just going to go to a sento, that's public baths, like I did yesterday, just to get all cleaned up and that. Bloody hell. Oh well. What a beautiful view. Driving between Okayama and Onomichi, it rained, and there was even snow flurries along the way. It was hard to believe that Thursday and Friday were meant to be milder and even sunny. The only reason that I was so fixed on these 2 days is that the forecast was showing that after Friday it was going to rain solidly for about a week after that in Shikoku, and I can tell you that forecast was right. I know this picture probably looks really glary and horrible, but up ahead you may see a suspension bridge. That's Onomichi Bridge, and then just the other side of that is what looks to be a cable stayed bridge. I don't know, but I'm just guessing from what I can see. That is the Setonaikai Jidoshudo. So that's basically what I will be skating either underneath or alongside over the next couple of days. But the smaller of the two bridges is the suspension bridge, which is one that's closest to the foreground. That's basically the one bridge that I can't cross on the skateboard, even though it's not an expressway or motorway. There's no pavement apparently or sidewalks, so it's just not safe. Even on a bicycle, they recommend that you catch the ferry here to cross that. But that is technically the first bridge that you cross, which is why I'm only crossing 6 of the so-called 7 bridges. It's just not worth fussing about getting a ferry. I mean, it's, you know, the whole point is to cross it myself. So yeah, but that's basically the starting point of where we're going to cross. Yeah, there you go. I must admit, actually, the Onomichi Bridge, the one that's in the foreground, the one that I was just talking about that I won't bother crossing, is actually a lot higher than I realised. So coincidentally, one of my brothers has actually been to Onomichi around 10 years ago when he travelled around Japan and had recommended to me the cable car up to Senkoji overlooking Onomichi itself.
ここ尾道は海と山に囲まれた情緒豊かな町でございます。当で国の重要文化財に指定され600年の古い歴史を持っております。これが見えてきた。尾道水道が紡いだ中世からの箱庭的都市というタイトルで日本遺産第1号の一つとして認定されました。
But the view from Senkoji was indeed worth the price of admission. From there I could see the islands that the Shimanami Kaido crosses, including the very first one that I would have to cross in my minivan Roland. But the others, those would be crossed by skateboard, and then by Roland, but I'll explain that in a moment. The weather had indeed turned much colder. Much colder. In fact, that evening was the coldest night of my entire trip. Temperatures dipped below zero and it was so cold. A sleeping bag and 2 blankets was not enough. But honestly, I think my adrenaline was pumping for the beginning of my skate the next day. An abandoned pachinko parlor? Obviously. Oh, it's an early start. Not as early as I thought it would be. I guess when I imagined myself crossing this Shimanami Kaido on my skateboard, but originally on a bicycle, I thought, oh, yeah, it won't be like roasting hot, but you know, it might be like, I don't know, 16, 17 degrees, quite pleasant. You know, once you get going, you'll soon get quite hot. You know, be nice to have the sea breeze in the hair and all that kind of stuff. Talking of which, I probably look a mess, but it is fucking freezing outside. It's like overnight it was minus figures. It was a really cold night. We've had some freakily cold weather this week, the week that I decided to go away, but on the plus side, I think that is the coldest that it's going to get on my whole trip. But today is not meant to get much above about 8 degrees, so on high level bridges crossing water, yeah, it ain't going to be warm. So, but I'm still pressing ahead. The weather is looking a bit more mixed than the forecast said, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get some coffee on the go and drink some water, because I think I'm a bit dehydrated actually, and then yeah, try and make a stab at actually making some progress. I decided last night that I'm going to skip one of the 6 bridges that I'm planning to cross, purely because getting access to the bridge is a little bit distant from where I can park, and it's all uphill as well. If it was flat, I would obviously skate there, and even if it was a bit uphill, I wouldn't mind, but it is a long uphill climb for about probably 15 minutes, I'm guessing, on a skateboard, because it said about 40 minutes to walk to like an access point onto the cycle path. So I roughly just under half that on a bicycle or skateboard. Skateboard's a little bit slower probably. So, and yeah, I can skate uphill for a certain distance, but 15 minutes worth? That ain't any fun. You're better off just getting off and walking, to be honest with you. So, yeah. So I'm going to skip that bridge, but otherwise aiming to complete 4 bridges today still, and hopefully taking a centaur that is on... Is it on Omishima? It might be on Omishima. I can't remember now. I think it is. Yeah, so should still be nice. Hopefully we get a bit of clear sky. I don't pay too much attention to these weather forecasts, because sometimes, you know, localised weather can be, you know, quite different to what they're generally forecasting. Oh, at least I managed to sleep solidly from about 9:30 through to about 3:30 this morning, and after that it was a bit patchy because, you know, I kept on waking up cold, so that's not too bad, is it? Anyway, right, let's crack on. Dawn broke and the sun was out. It was still very cold, but it was a promising start to the day. The drive back to Onomichi took no time at all, and before I knew it, I was crossing the Onomichi Bridge on Mukaishima. It was just as it looked like on Google Street View, full of adverts for Hero Wars. I mean, no sidewalk, silly me, sorry. Hero Wars is a YouTube advertisement thing. Hero Wars, brought to you by Manscaped, Squitspace, and My First Little Vape. That's the commercials done for this episode. I'll pass go in November and collect my 200 yen. The first bridge that I would be crossing was the Hiroshima Bridge, a suspension bridge that was completed the year that I was born. So at least the suspension bridge wasn't going to be telling me that I was so young and they were so old whilst moaning about its expansion joints. Oh, engineering jokes. Cue up, kids. This crossing is also different from the other bridges in that you don't skate at road level. Instead, the cycle stroke, pedestrian stroke, moped stroke, skateboard surukana route runs in a trough that is suspended from underneath the main deck of the bridge, which has an unexpected consequence which I'll get into. So let's talk logistics and skateboards for a minute. You've heard the one about the farmer trying to cross the river with a fox, chicken and a bag of grain. Now, notwithstanding Gareth's very good point.
What's a farmer doing with a fox? Fox is a farmer's worst enemy. He should just drown the fox in the river.
I was facing a similar situation, but with a minivan and a bag of rice. Oh, and the skateboard, of course, as well. See, if I cross a bridge on my skateboard, my minivan and that bag of rice is still on the other side. So what do? Well, you don't need the skateboard on the other side of the river and then walk back to go and get the van and the bag of rice. You skate back across the bridge that you've just crossed. So in fact, I was going to be skating the bridges twice. Once to cross it, and once again to go back and get the van, and of course the bag of rice, and then drive on to the next access point for the next bridge. The Hiroshima Bridge has a wonderful view, but it was somewhat obscured by the nature in which the lower trough in which you pass along has a lot of metalwork. And it also had one thing that, as a skater, that quickly drove me nuts, even with my setup. So let's talk about my setup. It's a polar P something shape, I think, similar to a late 1980s deck, but it has a nose like a modern popsicle, a cruiser basically, somewhere around 8.6 inches in width. To that, I was riding 56mm 78A, so soft, Richter Cloud wheels, Indie hollows with some Ace cushion pads, not strictly riser pads, but helped with the impact of skating longer distance, and hard bones bushings. This really caught me out to start with, as I'm used to riding bones soft bushings and loose trucks in a skate park. So at first it felt like I was skating ventures. And for those of you who don't understand skate jokes, ventures are the trucks. They're the metal bit that connects the deck to the wheels, and ventures are very good for technical skating, but they don't turn very well. Anyway, I soon got used to it. For those of you who are thinking, what does this mean as a non-skater, all of this stuff? Well, soft bushings are great in parks when you skate ramps, bowls and banks and other forms of transition like half pipes. And the reason that you skate soft bushings is because you want to turn quickly, smoothly and easily. But it does have downsides. Loose trucks are what I skate, and this means that when you step on my so-called park deck with soft bushings, it wobbles laterally very easily. Except as a skater, I'm accustomed to balancing on it. So why ride hard bushings on the deck that I was skating the Shimanami Kaido with? Really simple. Downhill and the risk of speed wobble. If you ride loose trucks downhill, you are asking for trouble. Basically what we call speed wobble, where as you pick up speed as you go downhill, the board begins to wobble violently, potentially throwing you off. I've had this happen to me once, back up in Iwate when I used to live there. I suddenly got violent speed wobble as I was going downhill. Hard bushings will help prevent this as they help reduce that lateral motion, but at the expense of being able to turn easily. Okay, so this is the proper start of it. Shimanamikaidou cycling road, Imabari. Ah, well, we're not going to be going as far as Imabari today, but it's uphill. Okay, let's go. As each bridge was high level, there was a climb up onto the bridge and also a long descent back down as well, so hard bushings was definitely the right way to go. Anyway, what's the problem? The trough was made up of sections of say 3 to 4 yards in length from memory, meaning that between each section was a small gap, Not much of one, but a gap nonetheless that made skating over each of these uncomfortable to start with, and by the end of it, it was absolutely exhausting on my knees. I managed to alleviate this by lots of small manuals over the gaps, but man, this was tiring. And after all of that, I had to go back for my van and my bag of rice, but no fox. Ohayou gozaimasu. ありがとうございました。どうも。From here onwards, the going became somewhat easier on the bridges themselves, as all the remaining bridges had their non-motorway traffic sections at main deck level and were all asphalted without too many expansion joints every few yards. The second bridge that I crossed after Enoshima was the Ikuchi Bridge. One of the big problems, especially in more rural places, is parking in Japan. It's not like the UK where even pokey villages and places have a small public car park. Sure, you may have to pay at those car parks in the UK, but there usually is one. And on-street parking in the UK is pretty common as well. Not so much in Japan. This means that the only public parking spaces can sometimes be convenience stores and pachinko parlours, and yes, none of those are really public parking spaces either. So to cross the Ikuchi Bridge, I left Roland at a pachinko parlour's car park. There was plenty of room, and given I hadn't been arrested yet for rolling a plank of wood with 4 small wheels on it across asphalt, I took my chances. I considered the risk worth it, as the worst that could happen is that I would have to endure a couple of minutes of having to play patchy slot at the end of skating the Ikuchi Bridge. Thankfully, that didn't happen. Much like the Enoshima Bridge, the access to the shorter Ikuchi Bridge was about 3/4 of a mile away, and the views really began to open out once I was on the bridge. Excuse the heavy breathing, but yeah. Skating does use a lot of energy. Right. Okay. I lost my bearings, no skate pun intended, a bit at this point, as I could see another large suspension bridge-like structure in the distance and mistook it for either the Enoshima Bridge that I'd already skated across or the next bridge on my journey. Turns out it was the Iwaki Bridge, which has no connection with the Shimanami Kaido and instead forms part of a connection across 4 smaller islands. I guess that's Heisei era construction money at work right there. There we go, so 2 out of today's 4 done. Not bad going. Being one of the shorter bridges, I made short work of crossing the Ikuchi Bridge, but the next one had a much longer and steeper ascent to it, and was a much longer cable-stayed bridge, the Tatara Bridge. So as before, I doubled back and rescued Roland from the pachinko parlour. Any longer and it may have been gambled away by somebody. The Tatara Bridge access was actually quite inconvenient on the northern side, so I had to in fact drive across the bridge first, park up Roland at a Michinoeki, and then set off back across the bridge on my skateboard. So in effect, going in the wrong direction at first, but due to my bag of rice issues, I would be returning for Roland. The Tatara Bridge is definitely one of the landmark bridges on the route, only surpassed by the Kuroshima Kaikyo bridges which laid ahead of me. The Tatara Bridge had an expansive panoramic view. It was just so beautiful. And also it marks a dividing line between Hiroshima Prefecture and Ehime Prefecture, and therefore the northernmost reaches of Shikoku on the route. Again, cyclists and pedestrians alike seemed to be enthusiastic about seeing a foreign woman skating across the bridges. I even had a good conversation with somebody halfway along the bridge, but I think I made them late for getting their coach back to Aichi. At this point, it was time for a well-deserved break, and I'd found an onsen on the coast on the Omishima Island, and it was wonderful. It was just what my aching muscles needed, along with my soul. From outside the baths, I could see the stunning coastal scenery. For once, genuinely, and I'm not saying this in a joking or a slightly sarcastic way, I felt like I'd found a view of the Japanese coast that matched up with my expectation, which had been built from what I'd seen in photographs. The day wasn't done though, as I had 2 more bridges to technically cross. They're in fact free, but I decided at this point to skip the short Omishima Bridge. Okay, this is the bridge I'm skipping. The main reasoning was that the access to this bridge was long, and like the Tatara Bridge, I would be crossing in my van first, then go back and forth on the skateboard. And on top of that, I would actually have to continue onto the final 2 bridges of that day, as the Hakata Island between this was actually quite small. So I parked up at the Michinoeki on Hakata and headed out towards the Hakata Bridge, which connects to the tiny Michika Island and then onto the Oshima Bridge. Okay, last one for today. The sun was beginning to head towards its daily denouement, and the clouds were beginning to roll in, but it really was genuinely a spectacular view. No YouTube hyperbole here, I think you'll agree. It looked beautiful. And at least for these bridges, I hadn't already crossed them in Roland, so it felt like I was actually making some onward progress on the journey using my skateboard. At this point, I had probably skated around 20 kilometres in total, and my knees genuinely felt it. But despite my jokes and my tone, I was beginning to feel a real sense of a huge accomplishment, but it wasn't my journey's end yet. That would come the following morning at dawn, but it was a moment for me to reflect on my life so far in Japan. 4.5 years ago, I came here with barely any Japanese worth a damn, and now I regularly have conversations with people on my travels. I had barely skated for 30 years when I took up skating 3 years ago when I turned 38. And here I was, 40 years old, having skated across these expansive highways above the ocean, 10,000 kilometres from home. I have no film crew to film me, it's just me with a GoPro. Well actually, I should check it. It's a DJI Osmo. There's no backup crew, and if I injured myself, I was carrying my sorry ass back to Roland and drive myself to a clinical hospital. Not that that would have happened, as there was honestly very little risk to what I was doing in my book, as I can skate long distances with confidence. I parked up on the final island before Shikoku proper, or Oshima, at a wide Michinoeki which afforded an incredible view of the enormous Kagoshima Prefecture crossing, marching solemnly off towards the mainland shore of Shikoku and Imabari city. I was blessed with a beautiful sunset and contemplated the day. It had been a real success. I ate like a bitch, but I had done it. Just another 4 kilometres to go. And of course another 4 kilometres back. After all, I had that bag of rice to go and get, and Roland can't swim. Okay, so the rice is on. The kettle, or the jet boil's on. Got all the stuff I need out there. Just going to make sure the mattress is all fully blown up, and then I'll set to on getting the blackout panels put up. So yeah, what a spot, what a spot. That's pretty nice, isn't it? And here we are for another day. 4 bridges crossed both of them twice. Don't know what distance that was. And dinner is ready. I've got some wakame soup, seaweed soup, salmon, and some rice with cheese or furikake, which tastes a bit like umeboshi or pickled plum. That's it for me today. Tomorrow's the big day. The big day. Alright. Night night. Nani kore. Sweet. The following morning I got up super early, around 5 AM, because I wanted to be up on the bridge before dawn as possible. I could see my breath in the van as it was still quite cold. The windows misted up from the condensation. Nothing was going to stop me. I was doing something I had longed to do, yearned to do. Whilst most of the year I go to work, I sit at red lights waiting during my commute. In this moment, I was the one skating against the flow of the commuter traffic, against the flow of everything in this world. I was doing something that made sense to me in my life, pushing myself literally onto the other side of the Shimanami Kaido, watching the sun ascend over the sea as I had longed for. Everything in those last hard 4 kilometers across the bridges felt like life honestly made sense. I can't help but look at the world and my own life and think when I feel this moment in my heart. There is something of seeming purity in just pushing across a bridge for the sake of pushing across a bridge, to watch the sun complete its daily rituals. By around 7 AM, I had made it. In a manner of speaking, I crossed the Shimanami Kaido on my skateboard. I felt a sense of accomplishment that I honestly rarely feel in my life, and I felt such an immense gratitude towards skateboarding in general. This useless wooden toy, as a New Deal video called it, is something that gives me a sense of well-being and purpose in my life that I can't put into words. For some people, their purpose is to go and have their nails done, drive an expensive luxury car, and dine in fine restaurants, and good for them. But I know where I'm at home in life. I'm a skater. I drive a 16-year-old minivan that I call Roland, and I enjoy eating and making my cheap curry rice dinners. That's me. This is how I live my life. This is how I feel alive and connected with the world. There's no bullshit, there's no backup crew, there's no backup plan. It's just me. And if it's just me, you can do it as well. I had honestly done it. 25 kilometers skated across the Shimanami Kaido. I had made it to Shikoku. Well, actually, more like over 30 kilometers skated, because I had to go back for my van and my bag of rice.